What's up guys, I'm Bind and today I want to share with you my recent painting process where I take a sketch and paint it to completion into a fully rendered image. I hope you enjoy. Anyways guys, I recently did a video on value sketching versus line sketching. And in case you haven't seen that, I'll put it up over here. You can maybe watch that first if you want to, because that is where I came up with the sketch that serves as the basis for today's video, right? So what we did there was basically do the same sketch with lines and then again with values to be able to compare the two and then weigh out the pros and cons of each of these processes. So today I wanted to show you the process that afterwards happened because I quite liked the image. I thought, why don't I sit in peace and just render it, see where I get at with that. And it turned out pretty okay, so I thought, why not share it with you guys. It's going to be a time lapse. I'll put some music. I will also do commentary on that, so let's get into it. So guys, this is the sketch in question, and as I said before, you can see that in the recent video about values versus lines. Now what I'm doing first here is, and this might be unusual to you, is I'm bringing up the color balance, and what is already there in the background I'm coloring it just by breaking the RGB balance, which is a very old trick. And once you play around a little bit with these color balance sliders, you will understand what that means. So now, since I have several layers from the value sketch that I kept, I could easily give color to that shadow in the midground there. It's a little bit more complicated with the foreground now, because you see that I want to put in some greens and make the whole thing look less gray, but it doesn't work out that well because I don't have these values separate anymore. So what I'm doing here is I'm just painting into it right away, and then I'm regulating it via the layer blending options, where you can basically specify how much the underlying layers overlap or give way to the layer that is on top. That is a thing, a little bit of an advanced technique to put color, but it's not that hard. You just by right clicking a layer you can bring up that blending options and play around with the sliders a little bit, and I'm sure you will understand. So the mission now is to make everything less gray, because the huge problem, well, maybe I shouldn't say problem, but the huge difficulty when having a grayscale image, and a lot of people struggle with this, is to make it look colorful and not gray. And I was pretty bad at this when I started out digital painting. I remember that I colored my grayscale images and they still look gray. And a lot of people have this problem. And that is because you want to keep what you already rendered in grayscale, which sometimes is a mistake, right? And then secondly, you're kind of biased now because compared to gray, everything colorful looks very colorful to you, right? And you're not realizing that it still has that grayish look to it, which is a little bit of a trap of the value sketching in general. So all of this selecting and stuff, well, now we're painting a little bit, but that is still to bring color to the image, which is not yet successfully done. It still looks gray. It still looks like a gray image that is about to get colorized, or yeah, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So decided to ditch that background mountain side there, which I thought was just too much for this image. And now is kind of the transition between coloring it and really starting to paint on the thing. And this will go back and forth for a while because I still have access to some of that grayscale layers, but slowly and surely I will get rid of them, meaning I will merge them with the colorization layers and then eventually just have a few layers that are fully colored and then continue painting from there. As a little bit of an advice that I would give to you, you have to get rid of these grayscale layers. You cannot cling to them. It will be your demise. Let's sounds dramatic, but I think that's accurate to say, because they will keep your image gray if you allow it to. So now bringing up that sketch, right? That is the line sketch now that you're seeing, also done, as I said before, in the other video. And that gives me information now about the character, what I was thinking when I was sketching the character, because without the sketch that would just be a silhouette and I would not know what would be basically the content of that figure. So that's really something where a line sketch comes in very handy, because it contains a lot of structural information about division of shapes and things like that. So once I'm at it, I basically want this character to be satisfying. The image is not about the character, so I don't think I will touch it again. And if so, then maybe only very quickly. The character needs to not bother you and is basically an iteration of the viewer, the virtual viewer, you could say. And in this case, it's also not about his design, so it needs to carry some of that language so that it fits into the image and into the environment, but it doesn't need to stick out. And that's why I'm not illuminating it further. I'm not giving it any blinking lights, any of that. So I just want people to look past the character and into the midground. Now I have to stick to my plan from the value sketch. That is to make the foreground really dark. And that way you will be more enticed to look at the midground, which has the most contrast and is more illuminated. It's a movie-esque trick there, that you can just put shadow on what you don't want the viewers to look at that long or that much, because naturally the eyes are drawn to contrast, right? So now the same goes for that next layer that I'm painting right now. This also needs to be darker a little bit to basically give way, provide the next level. And that is, I think, that is an obstacle for the character's journey, because if you have a road that leads into the image and that goes around this corner of that sloping hill side there, then what you will most likely anticipate is that the character is walking further down that winding road and then maybe ending up at the destination, which is what you're looking at right now. So now you see that I moved some sliders, and then that midground got more light and more vibrant. It will get more vibrant still, but yeah, to create a new save there, because I was not sure if this was the direction. And then sometimes, especially when I'm recording, I need some fail safe. Eventually I never use them, but who cares? It's I think the illusion of safety, right? You know what I'm talking about. Now making the foreground a little bit more exciting. The road was melted into the rock too much, and that was not nice enough silhouette, I figured. Bring a little bit of a detail, but at the same time you will not see me obsessing over the foreground as much as I will eventually over the midground. And that is also because stuff that is not as rendered, it will not contain the eye that long, because I think we understand right away from a painter's perspective where the attention to detail lies and where it doesn't. So these are all brush strokes now with yeah, one of my favorite brushes, which is just how could you describe that? It's a hard-edged shape that is kind of random. It's not rectangular, but it's also not round. It consists of a few speckles, and then if you paint with it, it breaks up a little bit, but just a little bit. But mainly what it will do is it is pressure sensitive, so it will give you more opacity if you push down on the brush, which is, I think, yeah, these types of brushes are the most popular brushes to render with, and I do a lot of stuff with this brush. I very early in digital painting, I got away from the perfect clinical brushes, and I wanted something that is not so perfect, and at the same time kind of hard-edged, because that is kind of is my style. I wanted to have a little bit of that graphical look. Eventually, I don't want it to be too oil painterly, naturalistic, if that makes sense. You could also say it's obviously digital kind of style, but yeah, there's I think digitally everything goes. That's just up to your preference. So now the midground obsession is kind of kicking in, because the only thing now that will tell me when to stop is I have to be satisfied with what is in the middle, with what is the attraction, the thing where I want people to look at. And I'm not satisfied with that, I'm not done. But of course, yeah, sometimes you need to let it rest for a day or two, come back to it. And I think I did the process through 2 days. So I did sleep over it, you could say. But yeah, a lot of times I will also do it in one sitting if I can. A reason for me to stop is generally when I feel that I cannot bring my best anymore. If I feel exhausted by the piece, I feel tired and I'm losing enthusiasm, that's a good time to stop. Also, you maybe saw me not zooming in that much. This is like one step closer than the full frame. And you can see it in the navigator window how much that zoom is actually. It's not a lot, and I don't like to zoom a lot because I think zooming in is a big trap. You lose sight of the entirety of the image, and also you start to obsess too much over detail now, because you're seeing everything much clearer and there's no limit digitally to how much detail you can put. You basically need to limit yourself. So these are now rather small strokes, but that's is close to the limit of what I will do stroke wise. I will not go to a 3 pixel brush or anything like that. I think the smallest I'm using here on that 6000 pixel canvas is something like a 16, 18 pixel brush tip. So yeah, as I said before, you have to limit yourself, else you're in trouble. Now, something is missing from the midground here, and I feel it. And from the beginning, I had this idea to bring some lighting or an effect to this scene. As you can see, that the blade there in the middle is kind of ready to have an illumination effect or to shoot out some lasers or anything like that. So that's what I'm thinking about while doing this. Also, the sky, I'm liking the purple haze there in the back, but the cloud is kind of now became almost too bright. So I'm also starting to sense that and start to think about what to do about it. And of course, sometimes the question arises, is this enough or is this not enough? And sometimes further questions also arise, like, do I just need to render it better and will it then be enough? And that is a very hard question to ask, because especially at an advanced level, because you are not being objective at this point while painting it. You are always, even though the more you practice, I really believe that you get more objective. But while painting it, you'll never fully have an objective view on your work, in my opinion at least. So sometimes you will not be satisfied. Other people will tell you that's great. And then after a few weeks you see it. And sometimes you'll think it's great, but other people don't share that view. And that's actually harder to find out, because people will then just not give you any attention or just not say anything, right? So yeah, that's a tough one for sure. Generally, I think the more professional you become, the faster you will be able to reflect on that. And if you're very young, things I did when I was 16, and I would look at it years later and then finally understand which one was any good and which one wasn't, and why that was. I couldn't figure it out for years, basically, and I think that's normal. There is something that we strive for, to be as objective as possible while also having the passion still and having the motivation to keep painting, right? So realistically, I'm telling you right now, this effect that is about to come I should not have put it up for that long. I realize that now, watching it back. But sometimes you feel like you have to prepare the image for the main attraction to come, and most of the time that is a mistake. And the reason why that is a mistake is because the image, if you put a crazy effect on something or put the lights on or introduce artificial lighting, stuff like that, it will change the perception of the image a lot. So you better see it earlier rather than later. And I think, truth be told, that was a little bit of a mistake here. I should have come to that earlier. Just when I had the thought, I should have manifested it and then continue rendering it. Kind of broke my old rule there for a second, because I always say, if you know what you want to do, do it. Do not postpone it for too long. So the good news is that all of the small details now, they start looking okay and start to make sense. And oh, there's the logo. Yeah, so you guys might not know that, but I've talked about it, I think, a little bit. I went to school as a graphic designer also. So, of course, in all of the artificial design, be it industrial or just fictional, science fiction, cityscapes, all of that, of course, you need a little bit of graphic design, right? Because chances are people will put up signs, there will be logos, and companies. It's just part of it's not only the shape language, but it's also part of like the display language, so to speak. So putting a logo there, and I think I'll change the color in a second there, because the yellow is all right, but it will change, I think, with some of the effects here. Now finally tackling that sky, making that sky darker. At this point it's kind of tempting for me to make it very dark, but you saw me making it dark and then undoing some of the darkness, because I realize I have to restrain myself a little bit, because if you make everything dark, then you take away from the darkness of the foreground, because everything cannot be equally dark. It will be too much the same at one point, and it is sometimes kind of hard to realize that. Man, am I really postponing that effect? You will see what I'm talking about in a second when it comes. I'm making that ship better, giving it a little bit of a blinking light. And what you can see there in the middle is basically kind of a triangle of attention that you create by crossing stuff, arranging structures in a certain way. You could even say, including the character, it's kind of a four corners of like a what do you call that? Not a triangle, but the other thing. A tetracon or something like that. You guys know better, I'm sure. So also I made those exhausts from the spaceship a little bit more faint. That was too pronounced. And now that is, through these structures, there is a way to bridge the midground into the background. That is the only use for that, to not have as such a harsh cutoff, right? playing around with the logo there and what could be done. Finally realizing that less is more. Which, yeah, sometimes it's just the case. Not too happy with the color there, that's why I'm changing it quite a lot. Actually, this blending into like the grounding, like the material, is actually very realistic. You just cannot read it that well anymore if you do that, but sometimes you have to accept that in order for it to feel more real. Because if you were to shine a light on the yellow logo on a white background, yeah, that would totally kind of merge together and blend. Also, we will switch Photoshop. Have I mentioned this? You guys are going probably, what the hell is going on? Yeah, I will switch Photoshop versions in a second to an older version of Photoshop, because this one, it introduced a bug that I could not fix as fast as I wanted it to, and I got so unnerved that I switched Photoshop versions, just so you know. But now actually comes the effect. It is a fancy one, and over the time I developed a lot of tricks to doing these fancy effects. Maybe one day I'll do a separate video just on doing effects. So this is basically a hidden selection where I blend into it and then smudge it. And then copy or duplicate some layers, put some more light and smudge them again. And this is a very tricky thing to do, because you have to exactly know how the shapes and the tools react to each other, right? And that's why sometimes you see me undoing and undoing, because I want to get the optimal effect there. So you're not alone. And now what I realize is that, see how much better this sky looks when you give it some of that color and you make it that little bit darker, and then all of a sudden this effect really shines. Before, it was kind of the sky that was shining through the scene, but of course once you introduce such a pronounced effect, you kind of want that to change a little bit. So now the effect became strong, and the sky is, yeah, complementing it, you could say. And yeah, now what we got a side product from this, which is that the stripes from the spaceships are again too pronounced. But also, yeah, now we also switched the logo colors. I realized that because now I just pair them with the color of the beam, which makes a lot of sense, I guess. But now this thing, it starts to come together where I'm like, okay, we have an image now, like talking on a really, like on an upper level of things, right? We have an image now that is compelling. This stuff looks cool shooting out there, and there's enough stuff going on. You could argue, yeah, maybe you do not need the spaceship. You guys can let me know down below. But of course, when we're doing fiction, why not have a little bit more than a little bit of a, let's say, what would be a huge coincidence in reality, right? Of course, you don't want to overdo that, because if you bring now the birds and then all of the tropes into one image, that might be too much. So I am actively trying not to do this, in case you wondered. So now I feel much more comfortable with the image. I feel now that I got it in the pocket, which means I can render some little stuff a little bit more, but I am looking now, yeah, to wrap it up, but not in an aggressive way. It's not like I spend 20 hours on this at this point, so that I'm getting unnerved by it and I'm losing patience. If that happens, you better stop painting. You come back another day. At least that's my advice. So I want to just put a little bit of more rendering on some of the structures there, which it does not mean that I'm going into more detail. And that is also a thing that I learned through, I would say, the last couple of years, that rendering more, you shouldn't do it for the sake of detail. You should do it now to strengthen the composition. For example, you will see me now on that layer toning down stuff quite a lot, because I figured that this will make the other parts stronger, and at the same time it will make this layer appear more realistic and not compete too much with the rest. So yeah, everything cannot be a super high detail. I don't think that's what painting is for. So of course there is a little bit of a looker, this little plant. So I'm putting a little bit of more rendering on there, but on other parts I'm just not doing it. And that left side, also in the mid and background, is a good example of that, because that will pretty much stay like is, and did from the pretty much very beginning. Sometimes I just keep the graphical heart-shaped language on the edges of the image, to just lead the viewer's eye into the image, but not linger too much on what is basically the outer rim, the frame of the image, right? So I think, yeah, some blending popped up there, and that is because I lost, I think, 10 or 15 minutes of the process where the recording was not working, and then I realized that, but it was too late at that point. But yeah, you only missed some blending. So now that's, I think, I'm really looking to wrap it up. And also, you see that I'm still toning down some of the harder elements. Sometimes that's a good idea, especially if you have a style like mine where it's hard shapes a lot, and then eventually, to make it a little bit more realistic and less graphical, you tone that down a little bit by making some of the stuff a little bit softer. And this includes what I'm doing over there, is overpainting some of the harder contrast. And also I'm cleaning up the layers a little bit. There comes some blending. Which at this point, the blending stuff is like a post-processing, just putting more shadow on some sides of the structures and putting a little bit more light on others. It's a bit of an optimization, you could say. And this is smudging. And also you will see that I'm toning down some of the harder shapes here in the foreground as well. So guys, I think we're almost at the end. This is, I think, a wrap. And yeah, in a second we'll look at the full image. Alright guys, so this is the final image. Thanks for sticking around. Hope you like it, hope you enjoyed the process. I think it turned out okay. And of course, as always guys, I will be leaving the link to my ArtStation down below where you can download this image for your personal use. Guys, if you're still here, thanks for sitting through this thing with me. Thanks for listening. And yeah, watching basically what was me doing my usual thing when nobody's watching. Now, you may say to yourself, well, you did record it and all that, and that is true. But guys, I record a lot, but I don't ever know if I'm going to share it or not. Most of the time, I don't. I just developed this habit of recording since I started doing YouTube a little bit. So yeah, that's it. It's the process. It's very unedited. It's just sped up, but that's what I do. That's how I do it. There's really no secrets there. Other than that, I hope you appreciated my elaboration throughout the process. I think it took me like 4.5 to 5 hours, which is of course too much to share it in real time with you. Would also be, I think, not that exciting. It is quite different than when I'm doing a live painting and doing commentary at the same time, because then my brain is half occupied with what I'm going to say, obviously, and then I don't have basically full capacity to paint at the same time. This was me pretty much operating at a higher capacity. Sometimes you do better than other times. That is very natural. You're not always bringing your A game, even though maybe you're sitting alone in your room at night and just painting away. Sometimes you feel it and sometimes not so much. That is normal. Anyways guys, leave your comments down below. Hope you enjoyed the video and see you next time.